Hi, and welcome to Coffee and Conversation. I'm Julie Nelson. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at Great Rivers United Way. And our topic for this session is How Are You Really? And I'm pleased to introduce Beth Tier as our leader today. She is part of Better Together. She is also part of the United Way crew. She is a lot of fun to be around and very knowledgeable. So please welcome Beth.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Julie. What a great introduction. And yes, I am Beth. I'm the project coordinator for Better Together, and Better Together is an 8-year mental health grant here in La Crosse County, really working on the mental health of our entire community. But we have a youth risk indicator. So we're trying to really move the mental health of our youth ages 12 to 18. But one thing that we know is that our youth are only as healthy as our adults are, right? Our youth are only as healthy as their parents are. Our youth are only as healthy as their teachers are. And you all intersect as community members, and the health of our community impacts everyone around you, including our youth. And so your mental health, your physical health matters. That those impacts ripples really impact our entire community. And so you matter in our project with what we're trying to do. And so we're here until at least 2024 to, bring this topic to the community, to highlight it, to give direct skills and tangible resources, but also, to have that really cross-community impact on this topic, because we know that mental health affects us all, and no one particular sector in the community, no one particular place can address this alone. We can't address our mental health just at the doctor's office. It walks into every space that we are. And so that's really what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about maybe a definition of mental health that you haven't necessarily heard before. Maybe you have, and that's great. That means that you are doing some really great learning yourself. And then we're going to talk about, those simple words. How are you? And I heard that as I was coming on this conversation. It's just one of those very simple phrases that we slip into when we greet other people. And oftentimes, we have some stock answers. And we're going to explore that a little bit today about how to have a conversation that's really authentic when you're with a trusted individual, to talk about some of those harder things and some of the beautiful things and the good things as well. Julie started it off in this small Brady Bunch conversation really well, and I saw many of you be very vulnerable, right? I think of you, Carlene, talking about the grief and the loss, the opportunities from the pandemic that's really impacting you. That's very truthful and transparent and honest, and it takes vulnerability and bravery to be able to express those things out loud. And so we're going to talk about that as well. So Carlene, you were really, I'm going to highlight you and your bravery and say thank you for that honesty. So in my project, what we have done since the pandemic has started is we immediately recognized what we call the shadow pandemic. The pandemic in COVID-19 is a physical health pandemic with an illness that is very devastating. That devastation, as you now know, having been a year into it, has impacted our economy. It's impacted our ability to freely move throughout our places and spaces in our community, to see our friends and our family, to be able to go to church or to be able to go to the grocery store. When I think about how many steps we've had to back up and think about what we need to do to prepare to even just go get groceries, right? Whether you're getting grocery delivery or whether or not, and especially if you're going into public spaces, making sure you have your mask, making sure that you have your hand sanitizer, making sure that you're keeping a distance. All of these things have added a great amount of stress onto our persons, right? Now, doubling down on that, when we talk about the economic impact toward families, and some of you are saying, yes, thank God we've been spared, but we recognize, that people are struggling. We think about the disruption to our home and work and play life. Many of us worked at home, and for some that was a great transition, and for some that was a difficult one. Some people went back to an office way earlier. I see Jackie is in her office, right? And the risk associated with that. We knew suddenly that, when people were in an office, they were at a 50% or more greater risk of contacting the illness. And that's stress that's on our body. And I don't need to keep enumerating, right? But when we look at the social upheaval, when we look at the news, when we look at a major election that happened at this time, what the impact has been on our brains and bodies of literally every community member, whether they're small and 1 or 2 years old, or whether they're 100, it has impacted us all. And what has happened with a stress response is that we are wearing that stress kind of outside of our body. We have an alarm system that really covers our body, that keeps us aware and alert to things, to dangers, to what's going on around us. It's that, automatic system that says, be aware of that tree over there because it's starting to fall, or be aware, I have to cross the street, where are the cars? Those kinds of, it's a protection system that we have. When our stress response is up, right, that response is kind of out here and on high alert. And so we've been living a whole year on high alert, whether or not we've been really focusedly impacted, by a lot of this stress, say economic stress is one of those examples, but no one has been spared that impact at some level. And so just living from that stress really impacts how we feel, how we interact, how we feel about ourselves and about our friends and about our situation. And so that's part of what we're going to be talking about today, when we ask the question, how are you? And really mean it. And so let me start. This is our first point of conversation, to get some basic definitions on the table. Mental health. How do you define that? What does that mean to you? How do you define mental health? And I want to open that up for conversation. And the way that I facilitate conversation is I let you unmute and I'll call on you. And so if you're brave and want to add a definition, and there's really no right or wrong here, but we just want to get down to a common language and a common definition. So for you, what is mental health? Go ahead, anyone, and I'll call on you when you unmute. Go ahead, Carlene.
Not having anxiety override your daily activities or your enjoyment.
So Carlene is pointing to a great word, and I think a very important one this year, right? Anxiety, right? Not having anxiety override your daily life. Good, absolutely. That's part of the mental health landscape. Thank you so much. Jackie, I see that you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think being aware that anxiety is a normal thing. I have, in certain circumstances, have a lot of it. And other times I'm like charging through with none. But I think mental health to me is to be able to be aware, identify it and then work through it. Kind of with some self-positive talk. That seems to be the thing that helps.
Good. Some strategies in there, right? Positive self-talk, awareness, right? Awareness of how I feel. Am I anxious? Those sorts of things. Really good, Jackie. Thank you so much. Mental health, what does that mean to you? Anyone else?
I would say it means how you react and respond to various situations, whether it's a pandemic or just going to the store or things. Yep.
It's how you react, right? Good. Great. Thank you so much for adding that, Ruth. Go ahead.
I think it's more mental awareness. So, I'm aware if something has affected me and I feel depressed, or I'm aware that just this simple thought that the sun is out has made me happy. So I think it's a combination of everything that my mind is taking in at the moment, not just my fears.
Yep. Good. Excellent,
Yeah.
Terry.
Seems like
Go
it's
ahead.
easier to define mental unhealth. It is when you
Yep.
are feeling very depressed or anxious or suicidal, to get to that extreme.
Mhm.
So to some extent, to me, mental health means having a level of confidence that I am okay today, that my world is okay.
Part of mental health as well. Thank you, Julie. Really good addition as well. Terry, thank you for that. And anyone else want to contribute to
Being
that?
able to distinguish between reality and what is false.
And tell me a little bit more about that. What is false? Like it's just that narrative that might be going on in your head?
Well, on one level, there's issues of paranoia and delusions. On another issue, on other levels, there's I think almost mass delusion, like people who deny climate change, or who deny that Biden legally won the election. And I think that's very disturbing that we've got so much of that in our society now.
Right. Misinformation, false information, leading to, lots of different narratives about what is real. Correct. Marcia, go ahead.
I think it's uncertainty about what's coming next. Whether it's financial or I have ongoing health situation, and I just don't know how it's going to go, and so that gives me anxiety.
Excellent. Thank you for bringing that up as well. Right. Anything else anyone wants to contribute? What is mental health to you? Anything else?
Just kind of going off of Cam's point of knowing what's real and what isn't. Like, for example, my husband and I feel very confident going for a walk outside without masks on. If we pass someone, we see them for 2 seconds. It's not a big deal. My daughter, on the other hand, who lives in Madison, says, oh, there's someone coming down the street. We have to get in the street or cross the street.
Right.
So all this, I don't want to say, oh, you're being too careful, honey. No, err on the side of caution. But what is right? What is the right answer in this?
Right. Really good point, Julie.
And I think one thing too is you said it earlier, Beth, how, a family life, my husband and I are working from home. So we, are here in our bubble, but we have children in college, and trying to deal with, just the different aspects of keeping ourselves healthy this way, but guiding them through this. We have a son who's a freshman in college who living in the dorms, and a totally different experience. We have a daughter who high stress right now, and went through some things in college where it made her move back home. So it's also that balance of how do we shift our mental health, our mental wellness onto our kids to help them see a different way of thinking.
Terry, that's such, and Terry has been through mental health first aid with me. She's gone through a lot of our training, and so I can see her perspective, right? So how we show up for one another is determinant upon how I feel, right, and how capable I feel in that moment to accept someone else's stress or anxiety or, heightened emotions, good or bad, right? I shouldn't say bad, good or difficult, right? Those difficult emotions like depression or sadness or fear or frustration or anger, versus happy emotions like happy, but also those accelerated, or exacerbated emotions on happiness, just being wildly happy, right? How I'm able to receive that is really dependent on how I feel, right? And if I'm able to take care of a person who is experiencing more challenging emotions and more difficult things, I have to have a certain capacity for that. And taking care of myself, right, is going to be able to allow me to do that. And that's what we're talking about, right? The health of our youth, the health of those that are vulnerable around us is dependent on how we're doing as adults so often, to be able to give them the skills that they need to really navigate these uncertain times. I want to honor and acknowledge everything that you have said today is absolutely part of mental health. Mental health in the definition that we're going to use is how we think, how we feel, and how we act. So mental health is how we think, how we feel, and how we act, and that we all have mental health. Oftentimes, we really move towards a definition of illness, right? And that's a part of mental health too, right? Diagnosable conditions that have names and need much, much, much more support than we can give out here in a just general community context, right? That need clinical care from a healthcare system. But what we're talking about today is really that general definition of mental health and that we all have it. Some people call this more of a mental wellness model versus a mental illness model, but it is very, widespread. We all have mental health. We all have a brain, we all have a body, we all have hopes and dreams, and those things really play together. So that's the definition that we want to use moving forward. And I have a little fun for us. We're going to watch a video. Part of our project in our pandemic response was to create a series called Dinner Table Resilience. And resilience, I want to give another definition really quickly so that we can be on the same page there too. Resilience is our ability to move through difficult or stressful times, but not just move through them, but to move through them and thrive. And that resilience is like a muscle. It's like a rubber band. It's something that we can build in ourselves through what we go through. If you ever hear someone say the phrase, we grow through what we go through, right? That's really speaking to resilience, right? And this is a very hopeful piece for our community when we're talking about the stresses and all of the things that I mentioned on the front end in the pandemic. Resilience really helps us get through this, get on the other side, and not just have gotten through it, but have gotten through it and thrived. Right. And that's very important for ourselves and our families, but very important for our community as a whole. So we're going to be talking about resilience too. But Dinner Table Resilience is a series that we put together as a project from many, many different avenues and people, but really centered in on our mental health director here at the YMCA in La Crosse and Alaska, Sarah Johnson. Sarah Johnson is a clinical therapist, and she works in a community context, not in a clinical one, to spread this message of mental health is how we think, feel, and act, and that we all have mental health. And to normalize conversations just like we're having today, to really talk about how are we feeling? How are we doing? What are we doing to get through these things together? And what are those coping skills and those self-care strategies that get us to the other side, that build our resilience in ourselves and others and allow us to show up? And so I'm going to show you a couple of videos, and we're just going to have a couple conversations and maybe do a little bit of practicing like we've been doing right now to have that conversation. How are you? And really mean it. And so as I queue up this video, one thing I'm going to ask you is actually to turn off your screens. When we turn off our screens showing a video, it is that more likely that the video and the audio will sync up. So if you're comfortable and know how to turn off your screen and turn it back on, I'm going to have you turn off your screen right now as I show this. And I'm going to get this set up.
Right, turn off the screen, you just stop your video, right?
Stop your video. Yes, thank you, Julie. That is so true. Just stop your video. And here we go. Make this bigger.
Everybody, Sarah Johnson here, Mental Health Director for the La Crosse Area Family YMCA, bringing you our new series called Dinner Table Resilience. Dinner Table Resilience is our new series of short little videos with tips and topics, skills and strategies for building resilience in your own home, around your dinner table, perhaps in your neighborhood from a safe distance with your neighbors, or maybe with your team at work. Today I wanted to talk with you about mental health. And what is that even? Mental health is simply how we think, how we feel, how we act. How we think, how we feel, and how we act. We all have mental health, just like we all have physical health. In fact, I'm going to give you a little spoiler here. Our mental health is housed in our physical container. So if our body is our physical container, our mental health is housed in our brain, just along with our lungs and our heart and our gut and our hopes and our dreams and our memories, all of that contained in our container. So, another spoiler alert here, the way we treat our container has a direct impact on its contents, meaning the way I fuel my body, so the right types of food and the right amounts of food according to how much physical output I have. And another spoiler alert, the more I move my body, the better. That really helps me and my mental health as well as my physical health. The way I rest my container, so if I'm having big energy output, I need to fuel my body and rest my body proportional to that. Also, the way I think about my body and the way I think about myself. So if I'm thinking about myself in really negative terms, that's going to have an impact on how I feel, which is also going to have an impact on how I act. So all of these pieces fit together. If I treat myself well, both physically and the way I think about myself, the kinds of people I surround myself with, the better I'm going to feel. That's really important, especially under times of stress. So any day of the week, on an average day, it's important to be daily doing things to treat ourselves well, and even more important when things are really challenging. So I tell people when times are tough, it's important to double down, triple down, quadruple down in what we're doing to care for ourselves each day. So your first hot tip for around your dinner table is to talk about the definition of mental health. It's simply how we think, how we feel, and how we act. And good to know when we're saying to somebody around our dinner table, how are you? And we mean it, we're helping them tune into their emotions. We're helping them name their emotions and express and share their emotions, which is a really important skill and a really great way for us to help manage our emotions in a more effective way. In future episodes, we'll be talking about how do you identify those emotions, how do you have those conversations, but for today, I'm just going to encourage you to talk at your table about the definition of mental health as how we think, how we feel, how we act, and knowing that we all have mental health. For today, please keep a steady head, an open heart, be safe, be well. Take care of your mental health and that of those around you. See you back for our next one.
Okay. Go ahead. You are able to turn your video back on. And really briefly, just want to talk about, anything. I can turn my video back on too, I guess. There you go. You can stop staring at my teeth. Anything in there that surprises you? Any reactions that you have about this definition? Mental health is how we think, feel, or act. Anything you'd like to say there? And it's okay if you don't. Does that surprise you? Is that a definition that you have known or have used before? Mental health is how we think, how we feel, and how we act. And just you can think about that in your own mind, right?
Yeah, had I never encountered you, I would not have known that as a definition. I tend to think of it mostly as how we think, and then as a result, how we act.
Right.
Kind of like
Right.
Cam was saying, if I don't believe that there's climate change or that the pandemic's a hoax, I will act by not wearing a mask or.
Now, taking that example, that feeling piece, right? How we think, how we feel, and how we act. Our feelings, our emotions, those signals, and the definition of emotions are just signals that our body gives us. And emotions are things, like the big ones that we think of: happy, sad, glad, but they're nuanced, right? And varied. And being able to name those emotions, right, help us tune into, what am I thinking? How am I feeling? And how is that impacting my behavior or my actions? And just that awareness. I think someone had mentioned, or a few people had mentioned, that mental health is, how am I aware of, what I'm doing and how I'm feeling? Good.
I think frustration is a big one that prompts people to act in ways that I guess are negative or are not really popular, or really lashing out.
Absolutely. One of the things that Sarah talks about inside of that video is that our mental health, how we think, feel, and act, is housed in our physical container. The one that I love to bring up, just as an example, is the word hangry. Have you ever heard that, right? So what's happening there? I'm hungry, right? And that's affecting how I think. It's affecting how I feel. And for many, it affects how I act, right? I start snapping, right? And it's connected to angry emotions or frustrated emotions. And something happens. Another really good way to talk about it is my window of tolerance, like what I am able to tolerate in that moment, whether it's, my kids yelling at me, or my coworker who really annoys me, or the news that's just driving me nuts at this moment, right? That, I have to do a little bit of research inside of myself to say, why am I behaving this way? Why am I acting this way? What is it, right? And kind of do a body scan and go, oh, I'm hungry, or I'm thirsty, right? Or I've got, sometimes you've got things going on in the background that are, really present for you here and how you act. And you have to step back and go, maybe it isn't the paper clip that I can't get on that piece of paper. Maybe it is that I'm worried, right, about something going on in my life, for example. And that's causing me to act in a certain way. And so when we have this very basic definition of how we think, feel, and act, it gives us a moment to pause, right? And think about those three things in relationship to one another, in relationship to what's going on around us in our life, and to take stock of that. So now I'm going to show another bit, and really quickly, any comments to that? Anything, coming up for you that you'd like to mention?
I think, like, when you talk about hangry, I'm an emotional eater. So not only am I eating because of all that stuff, I noticed the weight gain in COVID, so I'm angry at situations, but then I'm angry at myself. So I've had to drastically, change my lifestyle. And like we've always said, change my thinking that just because I'm anxious or whatever, I don't need to grab something out of the fridge, which is literally 5 feet away from me at the moment. So it's interesting that you talk about hangry, because I've had hangry for a year.
And how it's impacted you. And, the one thing Sarah says in that video too is how we treat ourselves, right? And how we treat ourselves impacts how we treat other people as well. For some, it's that we pour our love and compassion, our care and our support on everyone else and leave nothing for ourselves, right? Or we pour no care and compassion into ourselves, and that leaks out into our relationships, right? How we feel about ourselves, makes us angry and frustrated at everyone else in our life, right? And so how we think, feel, and act is a really good way to really take stock of, how am I treating myself? How are those thoughts, right? Whether they're true or not, how are they impacting how I feel, and how are they impacting how that causes me to act with the people around me, or causes me to act, in my own space. We think about those that are living alone as well. There are actions there, interactions with ourselves as well. So now I'm going to go to another video. We're going to talk a little bit about how to have an honest conversation about how we think, feel, and act with those that we love, those that we trust, but also those that we interact with, right? I'm gonna just do a little facial poll right now. What is your go-to greeting? Hi, how are you? Right? How many times have you said that probably already today? How are you? How are you? And what is our typical response? Give me just some typical responses to how are you?
Good.
Anybody? I'm good, right? Ruth,
Fine.
another one.
Fine.
Fine. Jackie, give me another response.
I always say, I'm well, and you?
Carlene.
Because I figure that it's psychosomatic. I'll be well. It's okay. I'll be well.
She's hopeful in her I'll be well. Carlene, give me another response. So how are you?
Well, partially because of COVID, and partially because we're both getting old. It's just like we've stayed healthy.
Yeah.
Or we're doing well.
Right. Julie, give me another response. Good. Yeah, we've stayed healthy. I've done that one too. I'm like, we're alive, we're healthy. Julie, give me another response.
Hanging in there is a good one of mine.
Yep. Just getting to some, all of these responses have honesty. Now, you don't need to answer this question, but I want you to think just for a second, when you've been asked that question, how oftentimes is the answer that you're giving authentic, transparent, and truthful? Have you ever said, I'm fine, when you're not? Right? Have you ever said, things are great, and you smile, but you've got a backlog of things over here, that you're really stressed out about. You don't want to burden the person, right? And you might not even know them. And so it's not appropriate to have that conversation. What we want to do is shift a little bit, and especially if you've got youth in your life, another question is, how was school? Right? And what do they say? Great, fine, no, boring, done with that, right? And not quite gotten that authentic response to that question. That's another really good one. Or how was work? Right, there's another one. I was fine, made it, I'm home, right? Or it was great, I had this thing going. So these questions, when we ask them, are really tuning into, how we think, feel, and act. How is our mental health? And so when you have space and you have a trusted relationship with a person around you, and you can say, how are you? And really mean it, let's just unpack that and look at what that conversation looks like. And so I'm going to play another video. This is another skills sheet and series that we have on our Dinner Table Resilience series. So I'll have you shut off your videos. Thank you, Julie, for that language. And we'll watch this one too. And just give me a second to get it queued up. And I've got okay, I'm just going to make sure that this is the one. It is. Okay, here it's coming to you. Thank you for waiting on me while an ad played. So here we go.
Is how we think, how we feel, and how we act. We all have mental health, which means when you're asking somebody, how are you, and meaning it, you're asking them about their mental health. Today's challenge is to do just that. I'm going to use myself as an example here. It can be helpful to start that conversation by role modeling and sharing from your own perspective. So how am I doing? Let's see. How am I doing? I am mildly anxious, feeling connected to others, and strangely optimistic. And I think I'm feeling this way after not such a great night of sleep, because I hit the trails almost immediately this morning. So got to move my body, got to smell the smells of spring, got to listen to the birds in the trees who are tweeting all over the place, and got to look at the leaves that are starting to sprout up everywhere, which made me feel more settled. How are you doing? See what I did there? I tuned in to notice how I'm feeling. I shared and named how I'm feeling. And then this is the bonus piece here. I shared what I'm doing to cope with my emotions. So I am going to challenge you, either around your dinner table or in the other ways that you're communicating with the people you love right now, to ask how are you and mean it. So allow for that space for an honest answer, knowing you might not like the answer, because if you love that person, they're not doing great. That's hard to hear, and important that you don't jump in and try to fix that. Important instead that you say, thank you for being honest with me. I'm really glad you told me how you're really doing. I'm glad you didn't try to sugarcoat it for me. You may then ask them, what are you doing to handle that? How are you taking care of your mental health? How are you taking care of yourself? So however you want to ask that follow-up, that piece about how they're coping is also a really important piece. And if the person you love says, I'm not doing anything, or I don't know what to do, that's your opportunity to say, do you want to think about some ideas? Do you want some ideas from me? Do you want to hear what I do to handle when I feel that way? Or do you just want to let it be for now and we can check back in about it later? So your challenge is, how are you, and mean it, and then really follow up with that. What are you doing to handle it and to cope? Steady heads, open hearts, be safe, be well. I'll see you back for our next dinner table resilience.
Okay, let me get back to you. Here we go. So Sarah just modeled an authentic, clear conversation about, how we ask, how are you, and really mean it, and tune into those mental health pieces. And so that's really your challenge as we talk about this today and as we leave this space, is to think about those places and spaces where you can have that conversation, where you can practice those skills to, sit down and as she said, leave space for an honest answer, and to really talk through with a person how they're doing and how they're coping, right? And that coping is really talking about self-care, and that's where I want to lead this conversation to now, is as we are dealing with all of the stress and all of these emotions, both good and challenging emotions, how have you taken care of yourself during the pandemic? And let's have a little bit of a conversation about that now. So what have been your go-to strategies for taking care of your well-being? And anyone who would like to share? Carlene, go ahead.
Getting outdoors is always helpful to me. It gives you a bigger perspective, so little things don't seem as stressful. And we have a very old dog. She turns 16 next month. So
My
she's
goodness.
still wanting to walk once or twice every day, which makes us get outside. But I think Cam and I have probably both agreed that when she's gone, we still have to keep doing our walks.
She's a good resilience role model. That's awesome. Good. Great. Getting out into nature, moving our bodies, right? Being physically active, getting out in the neighborhood, connecting, right, to nature. I think that's really important. Good. What else have you done to take care of yourself? What are your go-to strategies? Anyone else like to share? Go
My
ahead, Terry.
elliptical machine. And if I keep a if I keep a schedule every day on, I wake up, I work out, I get my shower in, it just seems those three things, if I do them every day, it seems to reset every day for me. So I don't feel like I'm like out of whack.
Gotcha. I totally agree. So exercise, again, taking care of that physical container can really, really help, right? You're releasing endorphins, you're releasing those good chemicals in our body that can really reset what's happening up here, right? That's really important. Good. What else are you guys all taking care of yourself? I know, Julie, you're really active as well. You get out in nature a lot.
Yeah, it's one of the things I've been very grateful for in the pandemic, that things I enjoy doing are things I still can do. Walking, bike riding, it's things that I can do with other people, so I can get some of that social interaction.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, try and be careful about what I eat, and resist the urge to go to the refrigerator that's 5 feet away. Not do that kind of thing.
Yep.
I have been able to get more rest during the pandemic, so that's probably a good thing overall.
Absolutely. Want to let others share? Jackie, go ahead.
Well, I have a tendency to be lazy, and so I thought, well, what could I do? So I've started exercising. That's good. Being aware of the food that's going in my mouth and why I'm eating it. And then when I've chosen something, to make sure that I appreciate it. Sometimes you run out the door with a sandwich and you didn't even remember eating it. Yeah. So, becoming a little bit more aware of what's going in my mouth. But the one thing that really has helped me is whenever I feel a little bit down and someone pops into my mind, I love to write. So I've kind of gone back to let's put a postage stamp on that. And so I've made up, I got some cardstock and made my own. I'm not a great artist, but so I color, and then I send that out to them, and people have like, gosh, that arrived at the right moment. Thank you so much. And I'm like, how did you know that? And I'm like, I don't know. I just felt like I should send something. So that kind of little boost helps me. They think it's for them, but it was really for me.
Yep.
So
there is no true altruism in this world, right? That's wonderful. That connection to others. And Ruth, anything that you'd like to share? Don't want to put you on the spot, so it's okay to pass.
No, that's okay. I think like during the pandemic, when everybody was home and y'all were in your little space and doing your stuff, you still need to, when it's work is done, still take that time for yourself, still read a book and do that stuff. You don't have to always be together with everybody. You still need to take that time and do your things that you want to do that make you feel good and that gives back to yourself.
You are resilience rock stars. You're mental health rock stars. I can't imagine presenting to a more wonderful group. I mean, you have it, right? You are holding this so well. I want to show you something that we've built just recently. This is a new graphic that we have coming out. I mean, literally today. It's kind of hot off the press. And so we'll get there. I'm going to share my screen one more time. So what does it look like to build resilience? And this is some of those positive ways that we take care of ourselves and really boost our mental health and well-being, so that we can, when we are faced with something that's challenging, when we're faced with something that's stressful, and remember that stress has lots of different levels. There's good stress, there's tolerable stress, and there's also, really toxic stress, those traumatic events that happen to us. Resilience helps us through all of the different kinds of stressors that we have. And like we said, resilience is our ability to thrive, to adapt, and to cope despite those tough and stressful times. And this is very simply what we're talking about. Resilience is built through your intentional activities that promote connection. So connection to others, right? Others around you, your loved ones, your coworkers, your community, connection to yourself. Ruth was really, really good to point that out, right? Sometimes it's great as, if you are extroverted and you draw so much energy from people, that is wonderful to get and fill that cup, connection to others in a safe way during the pandemic. But sometimes, and we all need this, whether we're extroverted or introverted, that connection to ourselves, right? That alone time to be able to check in with your own thoughts and feelings and actions, to be able to spend time with yourself in a quiet place doing the things that you love that refill yourself, right? But also connecting to coping skills. And those coping skills are many and varied. And if you would like to know more about coping skills, I'll actually show you the Dinner Table Resilience series. We have many, 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 many coping skills there for you. But it's practicing and using those effective coping skills that promote healthy living, you know, whether that's getting out and exercising or journaling or writing or, you know, doing the things that allow you to care for yourself, being able to say no, set healthy boundaries, to participate in activities that, you know, give us healthy distractions. Julie, you have been puzzling. I'm a puzzler, right? That's a healthy distraction. It's a healthy coping skill that allows us to be mindful and to disconnect, right, from all the things that might be stressing us. And then a very, very important coping skill is asking help when we need it. One of the things that I want to leave you here today is that is being able to ask for help is so important. And when we talk about crisis, a crisis is any time that we are doing something and we don't know how to do it, right? And that moment when we need to ask for help, whatever it may be, and obviously crisis escalates. So if you find yourself in a crisis where you are feeling so overwhelmed, hopeless and helpless, to know that there are resources out there for you. And in my last minute, I'm just going to show you our website and where you can find these materials and these resources to really help yourself and others around you. So this is the Better Together website, and I'll make sure that I pop this link into the chat. When you navigate to our website, you can see right here, here's Dinner Table Resilience. Dinner Table Resilience is broken up into a number of kind of chapters, you could say. An introductory chapter that really talks about what is mental health and resilience, and I will open that now. There are videos there, but what is really, really exciting is that we also have skill sheets, right? And skill sheets have prompts where you can, you know, do some journaling, you can do some writing, you can print it out, you can share it with those that you love. You know, if you want to work on these things, they are there for you. You know, I'm going to open up, for example, let's see here. Let's do our resilience role models just so I can show you that one. Here it comes. It's just moving a little slow, right? There's always oftentimes a reflection process, and actually you can fill these in and print them out if you would like to. And there's always a challenge as well. This is a long one. A challenge is really, you know, asking you to get outside of yourself and to share these things with those that you love, others around you, if you so feel comfortable. Further down on the list are green light skills. Green light skills are those everyday skills that promote a healthy, strong mental health and well-being. Yellow light skills are those when you've got a little extra stress, and that's everyone right now, right? These are coping mechanisms that can really help us build a steady foundation of, you know, strategies and coping skills when we really need it. Red light skills, so important, like I said, right now, if you need a place to go for help in those crises, we have all of that collected there for you. You don't have to think about it too hard. It's just right there. And the reason I love these, print it out, get it on your refrigerator. You know, when you don't plan a crisis, and so it can be hard to get that research done. It's great to do this ahead of time when you're feeling well, when everybody's doing okay, but to know that person that can provide a healthy distraction for you when you are just having a hard day. Who's that person or people that you can reach out to? Who's a person that you can ask for help, tangible help? You know, your car breaks down, who are you going to call? And of course, a professional person or an organization that is available to you, like 211, to be able to reach out and say, I'm facing something that I don't know how, and I need resources, external and additional resources to help me. we define a crisis here, right? So that, you know, you're not mistaken, and you don't, you know, like if you're like, oh my gosh, is this a crisis? Take a look at this, you know, when it's rising to that level. So this is all here for you to access. And again, I'm gonna just really quickly grab this link and put it in the chat for you. I realize we're over time, but if you've got any questions, any comments, I'm happy to stay on for just a couple minutes.
Beth, thanks so much. Great job. As always, a lot of very helpful and informative information. That's our coffee and conversation for today. We have more in the works, and if you'd like to see what they are, you can just go to our Great Rivers United Way website and look under the tab that says Always United. In the meantime, be well.